uh, chance of more rain later today and tonight, and we certainly could use the rain and a little bit of reprieve from the extreme heat will certainly be a welcome change. But we're brought to you today on the Gardener's Corner program today, and we have an extra special guest today. He really doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. He is a little bit nervous, though, I must say. He's only been in radio about 44 years. If y'all would at this time, please make welcome Mr. Mike Raley of WPTF Radio. Him and Dave Bratcher have been friends a long, long time. Also on the program today, we have Johnny Coley of the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service. He is their horticultural agent for Person and Granville counties. And Johnny is definitely a horticultural heavyweight. But Mike Raley and Johnny Coley, they're on the radio sometimes on Mr. Raley's show.
Right.
And so today's the first day that I've ever met you in person. I've heard you on the radio over, several years, and we'll leave it at that. But
I'm old.
It's really nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And we want to welcome you to Roxborough and Person County. And also, two big things happened. We had apples and oranges delivered for you. And we also had the mayor to come out this morning.
I know. I was thrilled to meet the mayor, and I saw the apples and oranges, and I asked Dave, I said, are they for eating or throwing? I didn't know if we were going out to the highway and
Right.
and throw them or not, but I guess that's what we do in Raleigh. But
Well,
I guess not.
Well, Mr. Raley, if you would kind of paint the picture of your life in radio and the gardening program. Is it the Weekend Gardener?
Yeah, it is.
How long has it been going on?
That's very interesting because it's 34 years old. It'll be 35 years old in January of next year. But so it's 34 years. Before that, we had an extension professor at NC State, John Harris, who was known as the Tar Heel Gardener, doing a 15-minute show on Saturday mornings from 1945 to 1985. And he worked with whomever was the morning disc jockey on Saturday, and I was the last one before he retired. I don't know if that had anything to do with his retirement, but he...
Man, I got to get away from him.
At any rate, he retired, and I was there, and we brought in an extension agent named Irv Evans, and we created the Weekend Gardener. So we expanded to 30 minutes and took calls, because John had just read letters over the years, and it's expanded into 3 hours over the last 34 years. We've been 3 hours for most of that time.
Well, I know Johnny had told me that he was on the show a few weeks ago, and he said it's a 3 hour show, and he said, Rob, he said it goes along pretty fast and pretty quickly.
Thank you, Johnny.
He says he really enjoys it. But how did you get into radio, Mr. Raley?
I was always interested in radio as a youngster, and when I was at NC State, I got involved with WKNC, which is the NC State radio station. And so I was taking one course. They had one course at the time. I was a student there for radio. I took that course, and the professor mentioned one day an opening for a job at WPTF for a producer. So I went out and applied for that job, even though I only had experience at WKNC, but they hired me. And I worked with the late Bart Rittner and Gary Dornberg. I was their producer for Sportsline and Open Line. Open Line was the first kind of controversial type talk show in the state. So I go into this big radio station, my first commercial job, and it's amazing. Everybody there is a legend. So I always like to think that I kind of got an Ivy League education in broadcasting, even though I majored in political science, but from just working with all these guys. Gary Dornberg, Wally Osley, Bart Rittner, Johnny Hood, people like that over the years.
Yeah, I was hearing you talk with Mr. Batcher a little bit earlier before the show. Now, how long have you known Mr. Batcher, the owner of the station here?
Well, Dave and I have corresponded over the years. Dave is a big wheel here at the station, and I work for the North Carolina News Network. I'm, as the British say, a news presenter. So Dave is one of our, in this wonderful station, among our affiliates. And so I know Dave basically through this for several years. Broadcasting is kind of a small fraternity, and it is, I mean, you kind of know everybody, or you feel like you do. So, yeah, Dave is a great guy.
He really is, and I'm not saying that
No, I mean,
because he's my boss man.
everybody says that.
But he is a genuine, good-hearted person, and he is one that believes in focusing on the positive and kind of let the negative take care of itself. And I think that's a wonderful,
It is.
attitude.
It is,
And
yeah.
but again, we welcome you here.
Thank you.
And I made mention that the mayor came out, and I understand that she made a
did.
presentation to you. And of course, Mayor Marilyn Newell, she didn't have a lot of time to hang around. We had hoped that she could maybe make the presentation, live on the program, but she had other things to attend to. But tell us about what she presented to you.
It was really an honor. So I was presented a certificate as a special guest visitor to Roxborough and the Person County community. And what a great honor. This will go in a very special place. So thank you, Mayor, for that. I actually, I've been a reporter and anchor, among other things, at WPTF, so I immediately jumped into an interview with her.
Uh-huh.
I wish I'd had a recorder because she really said some interesting things, and I'm sure she does when anybody speaks to her around here. She really knows her stuff.
She really does. I've had the opportunity to interview her one time, and we've been trying to work out another interview with her, but we just hadn't got it panned down schedule-wise.
Well,
But,
I'll talk to her and see if I can arrange
Please
that.
do.
Since
Please do.
we're new friends. So.
And look, but before we get any farther in the program, just want to let you know you're welcome here anytime. And anyway, you was a little bit nervous when you came in the front door, coming into a big conglomerate like
Yeah.
WKRX and WRXO. But
They had to haul me in on a gurney. I realize that.
but anyway, Johnny Coley, is a friend of mine, and I did not know Johnny before he started to work with the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service. He took the place of Mr. Carl Cantalupi. Carl was a wonderful friend of mine, and I think Johnny has kind of came in and picked the job up. And Johnny, he's a wonderful person, I think. And anyway, and I'm sure whenever you have him on the Weekend Gardener, that he gives you some pretty good tips. But you doing the show as long as you have, you probably could do it by yourself.
I don't really, partly because I don't know as much as you might think, even though I've done the show 34 years, but it's not as fun doing a radio show by yourself.
I
Some
agree.
people like to hear themselves talk, but I don't. I like to talk to people and interact and play off and, play a few jokes and
Have a good time. Nothing wrong with that.
Just like you.
Well, look, now we're going to talk to Johnny in just a few minutes. He's got a few things that he wants to pass, information along to growers and listeners. But were you raised were you born in Wake County?
I was actually born at Duke Hospital. My father was the Ford dealer in Creedmoor. And then we left after about a year. He had been there several years. And we moved to Nashville, North Carolina, Nash County.
Right.
And he had a Chevrolet and a Buick dealership there. So I grew up in Nashville. And matter of fact, I grew up about a block away from the governor, Governor Cooper.
Wow.
but it was a lovely town, and but so is Creedmoor, Granville
Yes,
County.
I love Granville County.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of good friends and a lot of good people, and we've got some customers stand that way. But yes, I think we live in us living right here in the part of North Carolina that we do. It puts us in with some of the friendliest, kindest people around anywhere. But I don't care wherever you go. It's a lot of good people.
A lot of good people.
But just the bad ones stick out a little bit more.
Sometimes, yeah.
So, do you make your home in Raleigh now?
I have lived in Raleigh, married to a Meredith girl. I went to NC State. We met while we were in school, and we have made Raleigh our home. She's from Pittsburgh, so we were kind of equidistant.
Right.
And my job has somehow allowed me to stay there. I've been very fortunate to have been able to stay at WPTF and for Curtis Media Group for all these years.
Well, you've got one fellow that works over there that used to be a part-timer here at the WKRX and WRXO, Jeff Hamlin. He worked.
Jeff.
Yes, he
What
worked.
a great
here.
writer. He's
Yes.
a really good writer.
He worked here some years ago.
How about that?
On a part-time basis, and I'm friends with him on Facebook, but I hadn't talked or seen Jeff in a long time. But I
Sure.
do hear him.
He does
on
work
the
for
air.
us part-time.
But so you're on the North Carolina News Network. You can also be heard on WPTF TV radio. I mean, also sometimes on QDR.
Yeah, I've been
all
doing
over.
news for them for over 20 years, and was part of the morning show there for many years, and also WKIX. I do separate newscasts for those two stations, and then about 73 stations on the North Carolina News Network.
Wow. What time does your day start?
I get up about 3.
About 3.
Yeah, that's something you never get used to. Getting up I don't care what anybody tells you. You never get used to getting up that early.
And you're on the job at what time?
I get in about 4:30, so it's not too bad. And then I do newscasts for QDR and Kicks, and then I start preparing North Carolina News Network, and the first newscast is at 5:55. So you got to be ready.
That's right. You got to be ready. Johnny Coley,
Yes,
my
sir.
friend, we're glad to have you out today.
Great to have Mr. Raley here with us. It is.
Absolutely. Yeah, when Mr. Bratcher contacted me, he said, Rob, Mike Raley can come out on May 31st. He said, do you think Johnny Coley could be here that day? And I said, Mr. Bratcher, I said, if I'm not mistaken, Johnny is down on the schedule
Righto.
for that day. I said, but let me contact him. And so I did, and he told me that you and him had kind of chit-chatted through email.
We did. I wanted to make sure he was here.
Yeah, but anyway, we're very fortunate to have the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service. Those folks are there to give information and lend advice at no charge.
Right.
And with the backing of NC State University and North Carolina A&T University, they have the go-to places if it's something that they cannot take care of themselves. But I think Johnny is doing a really good job, and I always enjoy being in Johnny's presence because he's the same always, and it's a pleasure to work with someone. And I've been around some people where you have to keep them at arm's length from you,
Right.
to kind of see what kind of mood they were in for that particular day.
And Johnny started a Master Gardener program.
Yes,
in
yes.
Granville and Person County, which is a really big deal.
It really is.
Well,
Tell him how big a deal, Johnny.
Yeah. Well, one thing I
It's
want
been
to
good.
say, Johnny was talking with me about the Master Gardeners. They had a little meeting or presentation, and Johnny told me he realized it after the meeting that he had given out some wrong information. And I said, Johnny, don't worry about it. all professionals make mistakes from time to time.
Yeah. Just do the best you can, John.
Yeah, just correct them as you go.
But,
that's for sure.
but he told me, he said, Rob, he said, I really done it intentionally, and he said the reason that I did, he said if any of them questioned me about it, he said he was going to tell them, I just wanted to see if you knew that I was making a mistake or not.
Isn't that a
Nobody
smart
called me
thing
on
to
it.
do?
Nobody called me on it, so I had to correct it
Do
after the
you use
meeting.
that trick often, or?
As little as possible. actually.
Okay.
Well, look, I'm going to just kind of sit on the side, and if you would, please, Mr. Raley, we're going to just pretend that you're on the Weekend Gardeners program. So if you would just kind of conduct business in a sense the way that you would on your own program.
All right, very good. Johnny,
Yes, sir.
I'm glad to be with you this morning.
Glad to be here.
What's happening with the Extension Service? I mentioned Master Gardener program.
Master Gardener program is going strong here. We're still getting our feet on the ground, working through getting more of an association and more of a organization than Carl had. Carl had a great program. He did several trainings, but we're trying to get a little bit more organized, I guess, through the Master Gardener for Granville and Person County. It's the Granville and Person County Master Gardener Association. So, great group of girls and guys. I say girls, ladies and guys that we're working with. I had 10 to go through the program this past year, and looking to do the program again next fall, or starting in the summertime and going into the next fall in 2020. The agent in an adjacent county is doing his this year, so we'll sort of rotate. Paul McKenzie, a lot of people know Paul McKenzie
Sure.
from WPTF.
Yeah, from Vance County.
Vance and Warren County agent. So great guy, great friend, and he, so he's doing his this year. I'll rotate and do mine next year, and so
How do people get involved? If somebody was left out of this program, they said, well, I'd like to do that.
Well, just contact me. I had a lady this week call and ask about the Master Gardener program of Master Gardener that just took the training this past fall. She works with him, Scott Ayers over at Camp Oak Hill, and she wanted to know more about it and know about how to sign up. So I just took her name, got her phone number, and I'll contact her. Next year I will have some not training classes, but some open houses, some open house opportunities in person in Granville County for people that are interested in taking the course. They can come out and it'll be sort of a floating thing in the evening that they can come out and find out more about it and see if it's something they really do want to do, and try to get people introduced into it that way. Paul McKenzie mentioned me doing that this past time that I did it, but it was sort of a spur. I say spur of the moment. It was some planning involved, but one day I just decided, I've done this research. I've tried to figure out what Master Gardener is all about, what I need to do. I just need to do it. I just need to go do it. And so I just decided to put it on the calendar and do it. And then I didn't think I had the time to do the open houses, but next time I will. Next time I'll definitely.
Have you
do
got
it.
any special programs this summer for
I do,
involving
just
people in
well, just had one at the library this past Wednesday on soil testing, how to do soil testing and how to read the report once you get it back. We are with the Person County Library also going to do some programs starting August 13th. Going to do a series of horticulture programs, and there'll be some things that are covered in the Master Gardener curriculum. The Master Gardener Handbook is wonderful. Just came out, I guess, last year. The Master Gardener Handbook come out, so it's been great to have that. We're going to do lawn care on August 13th. August 27th, we're going to do diagnostics as far as diseases and insects, how to diagnose different diseases and insects. September 3rd, basic landscaping design principles. September 24th, home fruit gardening. And in November, we're going to do pruning of ornamental fruit. So all these will be at the Person County Library. So we try to sort of do a series through the fall. So if you are interested in the Master Gardener program, you can come to some of these and just sort of get your feet wet a little bit on some of the topics that we talk about. We go into more depth than I'll be able to talk. These will be hour-long seminars or programs at the library. The Master Gardener classes go 14 to 15 weeks, and they're 3 hours long each time. So usually we'll have them. This past time had them in the morning from 9 till 12 on Thursdays. And actually, I think we talked about this, Rob, on air when I first started. I found a church that the church, and I always mess it up, which is in which county. I think the church is in Person County, and the cemetery for the church is in Granville County.
Right.
So that's about as good as I could do.
Does that cause conflict somehow, or?
Well, I just try to appease both counties, to have, the Master Gardener program, by being in 2 different counties. I tried to make sure that we cover both counties. It is a little bit of a drive down 158 from Oxford to Roxborough, but so far, I've had the Master Gardeners coming back and forth. So it's been really good. I've really enjoyed working with the group that we've got, and it's been painstaking to get through all the administrative type things to be part of the North Carolina Master Gardener Association.
You mentioned grass, the lawn care. This is kind of a transition period for a lot of people who may be thinking about a warm season grass. Do folks in Granville and Person County grow a lot of warm season grasses?
More so than used to, and I think Carl sort of started that trend.
Yeah.
Carl was a big promoter of Bermuda. He liked the Bermuda grass. It's a warm season grass, does great.
And there's
now.
some better varieties.
There
now.
are. Rather than a lot of times you mention Bermuda to some people and they say, "You mean wiregrass?" It's like, that's a weed.
You don't want anything that looks like that.
Yeah, but they do have some great varieties, a little bit finer texture grasses that of the Bermuda. They still are going to creep. They still going to spread by the stolons and the rhizomes. So you have to be careful with where you plant it, but with controlling them in your flower beds, because they can creep into your flower beds. But with
Well, they can also cover the lawn, and
Very well.
I know turf specialists refer to fescue as kind of a temporary grass, and the warm season grasses are more permanent.
This is true. The fescues here, we're in the, like you mentioned, the transition zone. So you can do cool seasons or warm seasons. The fescue is a battle. A lot of people, we probably have more fescue in this county and Granville County than any other turf. But this time of year, especially as dry as we've all of a sudden, 2 months ago, I would have never thought we were saying we would need rain ever again because we were so wet. But now,
well, I brought a little rain to town,
and I appreciate it. Yeah,
Thank you.
I was looking at the radar to see if I
And
needed
look,
to get my
leave it
rain.
while you're here. Don't take it back.
I would be glad to. I almost had to bring a coat up here. It's a lot cooler, so it's.
That's right. You're in
it's nice.
almost
It
a
really
different
is.
zone.
So,
And you say that, but the zones can be different in Raleigh
I
compared
was
to
talking
Roxborough.
with the mayor about that. Y'all at a considerably higher level here,
Yeah,
altitude,
yeah,
than,
yeah. They,
than Durham, for instance, or Raleigh.
Yeah, exactly. It's
So-
it's several hundred feet difference in elevation,
And that can make a little difference
and can
in
make a
what you
big
grow.
difference. It
Well,
does. It does.
you make mention of that. It was a report on WTVD television back in the wintertime, and they were saying people wanted to know, why does Roxborough and Person County, get more snow than say Durham or, Granville County and places like that. And it's because of the elevation. And I've lived here all my life, and I never knew that. But, a lot of times when we get the weather report that we see on, WREL for Raleigh, they're typically a few degrees warmer
Yeah.
than we are. And like this past week, we've had some extreme temperatures, and I agree with Johnny. A couple of months ago, we was all hoping for dry weather, and here it is, and now all of us saying, man, we need some rain.
Yeah.
But it's really tough, and Johnny has kind of coined the term, if you are new to North Carolina and you don't like the weather, wait about 3 days.
Sure.
I don't know that I can take credit for coining that term.
It changes very much, and it makes it kind of tough sometimes to grow plants
It
I know
does.
Raleigh is kind of in a transition area, and we like to. Some people like to try to grow oleander. They may have some
Yeah,
in their beach house,
yeah,
and that's a little tough. It's tough to grow oleander even in Wilmington. But tropical things there are, if you like tropical stuff, the windmill palm is nice. I got one in my
Yeah.
landscape, and that kind of makes
And
me
that's-
look like I'm at the
That's
beach.
one of those plants that it does well. You've got it. It does well.
Yeah.
In Creemore, it's sort of a borderline.
That's right.
Perennial or
Sure.
borderline hardy. Up in Roxborough, I would never suggest anybody plant a windmill
Yeah.
palm and expect it to get through the winter.
Gardenias are blooming nicely in Raleigh. What about around here?
Saw gardenia at a site visit this morning, and it was not blooming yet. So still a little bit. And ours at the house is budded, but it's no blooms quite yet. My wife would probably say yes, it is, but I just hadn't smelled it yet.
And the Confederate jasmine is blooming in Raleigh.
Yeah, Confederate jasmine.
Two
Confederate jasmine
wonderful
here,
fragrances.
and here Confederate jasmine again. It's probably not a plant that you could rely on it coming back. So Creemore, we sold Confederate jasmine at the nursery that we had there in STEM, but usually told people to plant it in a protected area. But in Raleigh, Raleigh's, it's almost like Raleigh's a 7B, and
Yeah.
we're 7A up here. So they sort of subzoned us as far as the hardiness zones go. So it makes a big difference. And we were talking about the turf and the fescue. The fescue is really taking a hit. People that planted it last fall, even we have the 4-H agent Michelle and her husband planted it last fall, and she told me how pretty it was looking this spring, and I said, well, just don't get mad at me in July and August when it doesn't look as good. But they're beginning to water it, and fortunately, we hopefully get some rain this weekend.
It's tough. People want to fertilize that fescue, and they just want to water it to death. But you're also promoting disease.
Yeah, if you do too much fertilizing, the nitrogen has been related to the brown patch in fescue.
Right.
So you don't want to do too heavy of fertilizing, especially high nitrogen, and too late into the season. Usually you don't want to push fescue too late, and now definitely wouldn't want to push fescue now because most of it is brown because of the dry weather we've had, unless you've been watering it.
Yeah. So again, if you're thinking about transitioning into a warm season grass, it's a great time to do that.
Yeah. Zoysia is a great warm season grass. I love zoysia. If I had to pick one,
Texture, there are a lot of different textures.
Yeah, of the
there's some that
zoysia,
are
there
less
is,
fine.
there is, and it's a very tough grass. It will compete with a lot of weeds, which is
Yeah.
great. It'll just choke out the weeds. It is probably the most expensive and the longest taking to get it established. It
It's
really,
kind of like ivy. It sleeps and
that's
creeps
right.
and leaves.
That's right. It finally after the
And
third,
centipede
fourth-
is the same way. Most of the warm season grasses, I
yeah,
think
other than
Bermuda's
Bermuda, yeah,
it's more
Bermuda,
aggressive.
yeah.
Well, Johnny, you being a cattle producer, it is a such thing as having some grazing fields with some of the warm season grasses as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Our pasture that we keep our bull in for most of the year. Right now, we made him happy on Saturday and put him with the cows. So he's a happy bull right
Smiling ear to ear.
now. But the pasture he's in most of the time is mainly Bermuda. So we have to start feeding him hay, or at least keep an eye on his pasture, because his Bermuda will go away in the fall quicker than some of the other pastures.
Do you overseed with anything?
You would think this past spring I overseed it with buttercup, but I didn't. I really
Well, that's
didn't.
pretty. I mean, it looks nice.
It was pretty, but they don't eat it, unfortunately.
Oh,
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I have a question. And I had a phone call several weeks ago, and this gentleman said, Rob, what are these yellow flowers out in the hay fields? And I said, they are part of the buttercup family, but I can't think of the specific name. And he said, how do you get rid of them? And I said, I need to talk with either Johnny Coley or Paul Westfall. Paul is the director.
Or Kim Woods.
Yeah,
could
and
answer that question.
anyway, so how do you get rid of them, Johnny?
Well,
do you want to?
You do. In a pasture situation, you would want to get rid of them.
Because the cows don't like
The
it.
cows don't eat them. They're actually, from what I've read, and I'm stepping into livestock a little bit here. I need Kim, but or Paul, it is an irritant to the cow's gums if they eat too much of it. You know,
Is it toxic?
It could be to livestock. Yeah, it is. It's not
But
considered.
I have
good
been
for
told
livestock.
that they're not likely
They're not
to eat it
Exactly.
because it doesn't taste
Yeah,
good to
yeah,
them.
yeah.
But on this same note, Kim Woods was here several months ago, and she is one of the livestock agents, and they had a seminar, and they had brought this speaker in, and whether you're out in the fields or out in your lawn or out in the cow pasture, you want to control weeds, and a weed is a plant in an unwanted place, and they have a way now that you can teach your cattle to eat weeds. And yeah, really and truly, it sounds odd, but it's something that doesn't happen overnight. But yes, and a lot of people think, when you see all of these little small buttercups coming up after they have had, the fertilizer truck come in and spread fertilizer, a lot of people think that the fertilizer man brought him in with him, but he didn't. They come back every year, and in a pasture and hay fields and all, you really need to spray for them and take care of them. But the only unfortunate thing, you see them in the springtime of the year, and I guess the time of the year when it's time for you to spray for them, you may not be conscientious of it, And there's so many things, as Johnny has talked about over time, whenever you start seeing signs of something in your garden, a lot of times it's too late to prevent it, And it's like you were saying a little while ago, if you do have fescue grasses, if you're thinking about putting fertilizer out to make it grow, you're just opening up, the window wider, for different funguses and things to come in. And once that fungus is there, it's nothing you can do about it.
It's and it becomes very expensive when you're dealing with fungicides.
It does. That's one of the things, and I think I mentioned it on PGF last time I was on there. I don't usually recommend spraying preventatively except for fungus. I mean, for fungus, you really do have to get ahead of them. They're coming on your roses. You're going to get downy mildew, powdery mildew on your vegetables, especially cucurbits. Just go ahead and start getting a fungicide out there to keep them from. It's more of a fungostat than it is a fungicide, because once the fungus gets there, the products don't really kill the fungus. You're using it to prevent the fungus rather than.
And always read the labels.
Always read the label.
So you think it's crazy, but I know the fine print, but you've got
to read that label,
what you're
because
dealing
there's
with.
so many products out there with so many different labels. I mean, the same active ingredient could have a different label, and if you're not following that label, that's what we preach in the pesticide classes that we teach for the farmers. The label's the law. So whatever it says is what you got to do.
Well, I think, a lot of us are guilty. When all else fails, read the instructions. But whenever you are spraying a chemical or a fungicide or anything, you really need to read it before. And it wouldn't hurt to read it a couple of times just to make sure you have an understanding. Mr. Raley, a quick question for you.
Sure.
Since you've been doing the show, has it cultivated an interest for you to get out and have a nice looking landscape with beautiful flowers, or did you have?
I kind of have to.
He's forced into
People walk by my lawn all the time. Yeah, I have. I don't consider it a very culturally landscaped area, but it's kind of a botanical garden, an arboretum. I have a lot of interesting plants that I've gotten. I just living in Raleigh. I don't have as much land as I need to put all the plants that I
Yeah,
I
you gotta
could
start
put-
taking
that I
things
have
out,
interest in.
yeah.
Because the longer you deal with horticulture, the more you want.
Yeah, yeah. And
I
every
mean, you
year they
get
come out with
greed.
new ones. So
Yeah.
yeah. And
So it's a lot of fun, and I have some plants. I pass along plants. Rufus Edmonston, who was the Attorney General and
Right.
Secretary of State, is a wonderful gardener, and he's been doing the show with me for about 15 years, and he's really big about sharing his plants, and he has a lot more acreage than I do, but he's always we go to remotes, and he brings along some plants for the listeners or whomever. And I think that's important. That's a very southern thing
Absolutely.
to pass along plants.
Lots of good pass along plants. That's
Really
for sure.
We need to take a break and get a word on for our sponsor, T.G. Brooks Company. Mr. Raley, I don't know if you've ever been by T.G. Brooks Company.
I'm going to go by there when I leave the station.
You need to go
I'm
by.
going
need
to
to
go
go by.
right by there.
It's like an old-fashioned hardware store. You'll see ice cream freezers in there. They have the Blackstone griddle cookers. They sell plumbing supplies.
Do they have overhauls?
You know, I don't know if they have overhauls or not, but anyway, if you need some overhauls, we can point you in the right
Okay,
direction.
well, I might need some. I do a lot of gardening.
Let's get a word on for T.G. Brooks Company.
The month of May is such a beautiful time. T.G. Brooks Company is ready for you for the garden season. It's time to have fun and beautify. They've got your tomato plants, the popular local varieties. They have pepper plants, cantaloupe, plenty of vegetables, squash, cucumber, okra, eggplant, watermelon, cauliflower, and plenty of flowers, petunias, celosia, impatiens, verbena, marigolds, Easter bonnet, herbs like basil, chives, thyme, oregano, dill, cilantro, peppermint. They've got lavender. Come to T.G. Brooks and get your fresh garden seeds, fresh and ready for planting. Reseed your lawn with clean, fresh grass seed. And they have the fertilizer and lime. If you need mulch, they've got it. Even the triple ground mulch. Do you need straw, pine needles? How about potting soil, planting soil, or cow manure? They have spreaders and they have aerators for sale or rent. T.G. Brooks Company serves the homeowner and the commercial landscaper, and they handle everybody with the same courteous service. They'll arrange delivery, or you can pull in with your pickup truck, your trailer. They'll load it up for you. They have bagged products that they'll load up for you. It's exciting that May is here and the full-time growing season. Top off your day with a hand-cut ribeye steak from T.G. Brooks. Mouth-watering. Hurry out to 411 Helena Mariah Road in Timberlake. Phone them at 364-2428. They've proudly served the homeowner, the farmer, and those in construction since way back in 1936. They welcome folks from all over Person County, Rougemont, Northern Durham, and of course, Southern Person County.
Here we are back on the Gardeners Corner program today. We've got Johnny Coley of the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service here with us. He is the horticultural agent for Person and Granville counties. And we also have Mr. Mike Raley of WPTF Radio and the Weekend Gardener program. And we're glad to have him here. Mr. Raley,
You can call me Mike.
well,
We're already 45 minutes into this show. You can call me Mike.
have you made many trips to Roxborough before?
No, I haven't. I have, to tell you the truth, I don't know if anybody's listening or watching or not, but when I was at State, I used to go see a little girl in South Boston, so I'd come to Roxborough.
Headed to Virginia.
Yeah, you know, just sure.
Yeah,
So
well,
I'm familiar with the area, and it's such a gorgeous area. I've met some really fine people. I went to school with some folks from Roxborough.
wow.
So, yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you here today.
It's an honor.
Want you to come back anytime. We sure do.
I would love to.
Now, a little bit of background about your gardening program. Are you always at a different location for each show?
Quite often we're in the studio, but we do a lot of remote broadcasts during the year. We do the State Farmers Market in Raleigh 3 or 4 times a year, and different. We have a lot of sponsors, and we like to go out and
Go to the different
talk
locations.
to folks. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Absolutely, get to shaking out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I much prefer doing that, unless it's really cold or really hot, and we're going to have to be outside.
Yeah, we
so.
do remotes at T.G. Brooks a lot of times, and
Yeah,
fortunately they have a place they can put us
They
in.
won't let you come inside?
Well, they do. Now, the last 2 times we were there, we were inside. But now we've been out there several times, and if you're standing in the road looking at the building, we typically set up on the left-hand side. And it's been several times when we would go out there in early spring of the year, and we would leave with almost a sunburn. And then we have been out there in the wintertime, and we would have snow start falling when we were there.
Wow.
But we would be on the inside.
Yeah,
But
I understand that.
a little while ago, when you were talking about Raleigh, I don't get over there much, but the State Farmers Market, you know, it is nothing like going over there and just walking down the center aisle and seeing all the beautiful vegetables and flowers. And it's almost like being somewhere you've never been before, but you get to think, man, I love this place.
Well, it's to me during the summertime, when they're, especially June, July, when there are a lot of vegetables and plants there, it reminds me, when I just kind of sniff and close my eyes, it reminds me of walking through a good old country garden in Nash County when I was a kid. You get that fragrance, the butter beans and the peas and the peaches and just
Yeah, well, that being said, growing up in Nash County, did you ever go snipe hunting?
I did not, but I made it possible for others to go.
Right.
Set the trip up for others.
Scholarship program.
Yes. How about you, Johnny? Did you ever?
No, never
have
had
the
the opportunity.
to go?
Never
Well,
did. Never. That or
you've
cow
never
tipping,
been-
either one.
Huh?
Never went cow tipping either.
I've never done any cow tipping. I've been on a few
Never do
snipe
that.
hunting adventures, but anyway, it's really interesting, you know, when you talk to people about their background and everything, and you know, the little simple things in life is what we most all seem to enjoy the most. You know, it's almost like things that remind you of your childhood, and it's just a lot of memories are irreplaceable. And you know, unfortunately, sometimes Father Time does things to a person's mind and you can't remember things. But you know, just when you just sometimes have time to just think back of things, and it's a lot of things you may not think of, but it could be one little thing, maybe the smell or the sight of something that will bring back a fond memory to your mind.
Sure, an apple pie cooking in the kitchen, or a gardenia. I associate a gardenia, every time I smell one, I think of one of my aunts, one of my mother's sisters, and she had one on the side of her house. It was pretty large. And every time during the summer I would go there, that's what the fragrance I remember. And to this day, every time I smell one, that's it.
I
Great
do that
memory.
with Sweet Betsy. Sweet Betsy's my
Sweet
great
Betsy,
aunt
yeah.
had a Sweet
But
Betsy.
you know, the
up
Sweet
on-
Betsy is an interesting plant because they've been hybridized so much that
They
and
have-
some of them you have to be
don't have the
careful when you
scent,
buy
no,
them because
yeah.
some don't have
Yeah.
any fragrance.
Oh, really?
At all.
We have
Yeah,
some planted
yeah.
at home, and they are very fragrant. They certainly
Yeah,
are.
but you're right.
The
they
mock
have
orange is like that too.
Exactly.
Look, we've got about 5 more minutes, and we're going to have to wrap it up. So y'all just go ahead. Johnny, you may have some things that you want to make mention of about maybe what people need to be aware of in the
Well-
landscape and in the garden.
One thing to be aware of, and we mentioned labels earlier, and a lot of herbicides are sprayed, you know, this time of year because the weeds always outgrow everything else. But you just need to be careful with the herbicides. especially with the temperatures we've had, you don't want to spray those herbicides if it's above 85 degrees.
It actually changes the chemical.
It does.
Volatilizes.
It does. Volatilizes.
One other thing about chemicals, especially for the homeowner, is to make sure that you are properly attired.
Exactly.
For that.
Exactly.
Don't go out in shorts. Make sure you're in long pants, long sleeves. I know it's hot.
Yeah.
Wear gloves. Sometimes people are a little allergic to the chemicals or the bases, and wear a little mask if you need to before you apply these. And again, read the label.
The protection equipment is very critical. You do need to do that. I see people out there spraying Roundup or glyphosate or anything in shorts. It's not a good idea to find out whether a drift is occurring because you have shorts on. You feel it on your legs. That's not a good way to check that.
You can destroy some very valuable
You
plants that way too.
You can. So it's you want to be well protected. I've heard Dr. Joe Neal from NC State speak a couple of times and on glyphosate, because glyphosate has gotten a bad name here lately in the news, and he says that you need to wear protective clothing whenever you spray any chemicals. So it's not a good idea to just go out there without anything on your hands. I sprayed chemicals for years, and I still spray some at home, but every week when I was in the nursery, and I always covered up. I always made sure I had the appropriate equipment on, whether it be a respirator. Some things call for actually a respirator if you're spraying inside a greenhouse, so most people don't have to worry about that in their lawns, or in their yard landscapes. But you just pay attention to that label. That label is critical. And another thing I wanted to mention was scouting. My wife and I were out looking at the squash and cucumber plants last night. Found some squash bug eggs on the back of the squash plant, squash leaves. When I got those off, I actually found a colony of squash bugs congregating on the leaves, getting rid of those before they become a problem. The time to get them is early. You just want to scout and see what's going on in the garden and the landscape. If you can catch it early. Went to a site visit last week about lady has some roses. The sawfly larvae are really on the roses now. If you see the holes becoming in your roses, and you look real closely, you can't see them. They're very small and about the same color as the leaf, but they're called rose slugs, what it is a sawfly larvae. And you can spray. There's several pesticides that you can get those with.
And it's important to get on a spraying program for fungicides and pesticides, insecticides, and fertilizer for roses.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Fertilizer.
Roses, as we found out when we were at Witherspoon a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if I should say a company.
That's all right.
But anyway, we were there, and they were saying how important the fertilizer is. I mean, roses bloom. You want them to bloom all summer. It takes a lot of energy for plants to bloom. I mean, most plants bloom once a year.
Something else that people are really interested in right now is tomatoes too. What should we be doing with our tomatoes?
Again, scouting. Right now with the temperatures and the dry, keeping some water on them. Tomatoes want to stay evenly moist. They don't want to dry out and then get real wet, then dry out and get real wet. You need to keep an even moisture. They'll wilt a little bit. The blossom end rot will be worse on them if you do those extremes. There's lots of things that can cause the blossom end rot. Blossom end rot ultimately is a calcium deficiency, but there's several factors that can cause the calcium not to be taken up by the plant. So the pH is one of those, but the heat, which we don't have we can't control that, but there's a lot of factors. But start just looking, keep an eye out for different pests. White flies, aphids love the tomatoes. If you can catch them early, that's the thing you want to do on those. And
Keep plenty of Duke's mayonnaise too.
that's
Absolutely.
right.
You better believe it. It ain't nothing no better than homegrown tomatoes.
A little white bread and Duke's mayonnaise and a tomato.
Do you like tomato sandwiches with
I
fried
do,
chicken?
especially if they have bacon. No.
You never had tomato sandwiches with
I
fried chicken?
have not. Is that a delicacy
Try it.
here in Roxborough?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'll take that back.
Or how about a banana sandwich with fried chicken?
I'm
You
thinking-
know,
I'm getting-
banana sandwich.
I've had a fried banana sandwich like Elvis, but
I'm getting a theme here
boy.
with fried chicken. Anything is good.
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with that. I'm sold.
Well, look,
Like that with honey.
we're about out of time. Special thanks to Mike Raley, of
Thank you.
WPTF Radio and the Weekend Gardener. And you'll be on tomorrow morning, I
I'll
guess.
be there 8 till 11. Yeah.
8 till
Even-
11.
Even if nobody else shows up, I'll be
And,
there.
and what is the dial setting?
It's 680.
680
Since
AM.
1924.
Check it out. Also, thanks to Johnny Coley
Thank you.
of the
for-
North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service. We appreciate our sponsor of the day, T.G. Brooks Company. We want to wish you and yours a happy and safe weekend. On behalf of myself, Rob Hall, and everyone here at the station, thank you for your support, and we look forward to having you back again next week